All right, I'm now going to read the excerpt from Obama's website on religion and politics. I came to see my faith as both a personal commitment to Christ and a commitment to my community, that while I could sit in church and pray all I want, I wouldn't be fulfilling God's will unless I went out and did the Lord's work. There are millions of Americans who share a similar view of their faith, who feel they have an obligation to help others, and they're making a difference in communities all across this country through initiatives like Ready for Work, which is helping ensure that ex-offenders don't return to a life of crime, or Catholic Charities, which is feeding the hungry and making sure we don't have homeless veterans sleeping on the streets of Chicago, or the good work that's being done by a coalition of religious groups to rebuild New Orleans. You see, while these groups are made up of folks who've come together around a common faith, they're usually working to help people of all faiths or of no faith at all, and they're particularly well placed to offer help. As I've said many times, I believe that change comes not from the top down, but from the bottom up, and few are closer to people than our churches, synagogues, temples, and mosques. That's why Washington needs to draw on them. The fact is, the challenges we face today, from saving our planet to ending poverty, are simply too big for government to solve alone. We need all hands on deck. I'm not saying that faith-based groups are an alternative to government or secular nonprofits. And I'm not saying that they're somehow better at lifting people up. What I'm saying is that we all have to work together, Christian and Jew, Hindu and Muslim, believer and non-believer alike, to meet the challenges of the 21st century. Now, I know there are some who bristle at the notion that faith has a place in the public square. Make no mistake, as someone who used to teach constitutional law, I believe deeply in the separation of church and state. But I don't believe this partnership will endanger that idea, as long as we follow a few basic principles. First, if you get a federal grant, you can't use that grant money to proselytize to the people you help, and you can't discriminate against them or against the people you hire on the basis of their religion. Second, federal dollars that go directly to churches, temples, and mosques can only be used on secular programs. All right, so like I said at the end of the last video, he does use religious language like Lord's work, but it's not about things like spreading the message that you need Christ as your Savior. He just uses those to describe things like ensuring benefits for veterans, rebuilding communities destroyed by natural disasters, working to prevent ex-prisoners from returning to crime. And when he talks about his President's Council for Faith-Based Partnerships, he does at least, he spells out the terms in which separation between church and state can be maintained. I don't know how well that would work, but he does spell out those terms. All right, now, as for Obama asking Rick Warren to deliver the inaugural invocation, I can understand why many people, particularly gay rights activists, are offended by that. But Rick Warren is also complex in his own right, because he's one who also believes, like Obama, in channeling the church's energies to help solve secular problems. So even though Warren adopts the church's traditional stance on homosexuality and abortion, he often makes these issues take a back seat to his social action projects, like expanding educational opportunities for the poor, helping to reduce international poverty and disease, and working to stop the spread of AIDS and of global warming. Still, many secular people and religious liberals also feel that Warren's inflammatory words on homosexuality, as well as his support for Proposition 8, overshadow all positive aspects of his social activism. But of course, as I see it, what else can a pastor do when it comes to those kinds of issues? Warren's anti-gay sentiments, they're all right there in the good book. Leviticus 20, verses 11 through 17, describes homosexuality, incest, bestiality alike as all abominations. And Warren's condemnations are actually a bit mild, given that he doesn't follow through with the Bible's instructions, that all those who commit these kinds of crimes, including adulterers, all should be put to death. All right, there's a USA article today called Obama Defends Inaugural Invitation to Warren. And in that, Obama's response to protesters, I have to say, includes some fuzzy language. He says that our noisy and opinionated diversity is part of the magic of our country. Now, that doesn't quite succeed, at least for me, in downplaying the fact that Warren used his influence in getting Proposition 8 passed, and which ended up in depriving the gay community of its rights. All right, here's an excerpt from that USA article. During the course of the entire inaugural festivities, there are going to be a wide range of viewpoints that are presented, said Obama. And that's how it should be, because that's what America is about. That's part of the magic of this country, that we're diverse and noisy and opinionated. Yet Obama has also taken measures to counteract perceptions that inviting Rick Warren means Obama is endorsing Warren's biblical-based bigotry. For one, Obama's requested that the ceremony's closing prayers be led by Joseph Lowery, a minister who has spoken out in favor of gay clergy. That USA Today article includes following observations from Eddie Glaude. He's a professor of religion at Princeton University. By choosing Warren and Lowery as the religious bookends to the inaugural ceremony, he's reaching out across a wide swath of the American religious community. It's a sign of how shrewd he is. Second, Obama also specifies that he remains a fierce advocate for equality for gay and lesbian Americans. But he adds, however, that he and Warren's clash in this area of gay rights doesn't eliminate all common ground. It's more from that same article. We're not going to agree on every single issue. But what we have to be able to do is to create an atmosphere where we can disagree without being disagreeable, and then focus on those things that we hold in common as Americans. Now, the advantages of inviting Warren are clear. He is arguably the most influential evangelist in the country at this moment. In his book, The Purpose-Driven Life, that's one of the best-selling nonfiction books of all time, selling over 20 million copies. And having him deliver the inaugural invocation strengthens Obama's support from Warren's millions of Christian fans, and that helps lessen the impact from the attacks that Obama's received from other influential evangelists, such as James Dobson. I have a little footnote here on James Dobson. Now, in addition to Dobson's accusation, well, this is an earlier footnote that I skipped over, about he accused Obama of deliberately distorting the Bible. But he also released this attack back in October 2008 called Letter from 2012 in Obama's America. And this is a hypothetical letter from a Christian in the year 2012. And the letter describes this nightmarish America after 4 years of Obama's rule. The removal of obscenity laws resulted in television broadcasts of explicit sex acts 24 hours a day. Al-Qaeda takes over Iraq, terrorist bombs kill thousands of U.S. cities, and to top it off, homosexual marriages become the norm in all 50 states. And the Boy Scouts have disbanded rather than obey a decision forcing them to allow homosexual scoutmasters. All right, so that's from James Dobson. All right, now the disadvantages of inviting Rick Warren are also being made clear from the numerous protests from those insulted by this perceived legitimacy bestowed upon Warren's anti-gay sentiments. But I'd like to think that Obama's outspoken defense of gay rights, as well as the ceremony's inclusion of Joseph Lowery, succeeds in at least taking some of that sting away from that insult. Now, given that politicians will be criticized for whatever stance they take when it comes to mixing religion and politics, Obama admits the temptation for politicians to try to shy away from the subject of religion altogether. Some more excerpts here from The Audacity of Hope. Those of us in public office may try to avoid the conversation about religious values altogether, fearful of offending anyone and claiming that, regardless of our personal beliefs, constitutional principles tie our hands on issues like abortion or school prayer. And indirectly, that is, by mentioning the views of those on the left, Obama even acknowledges the danger of mixing political power with something as inherently irrational and intolerant as religion. All right, this is from Audacity of Hope. Some on the left, although not those in public office, go further than simply avoiding religion, dismissing religion in the public square as inherently irrational, intolerant, and therefore dangerous. It's on page 213. But Obama also points out the greater danger, the bad politics of a politician taking such a secular approach that she or he appears to neglect the religious concerns of the devout. And I'll get to that in part 4.